A child dies while local agencies are supposed to be watching. According to the numbers from the Commonwealth, it happens more than it should. Innocent children taken far too soon. Their families want justice, but most of all, they just want answers. In a story you will only see on ABC 13, I looked at whether staffing issues are putting some of the area's most vulnerable at risk. This should be the safest place for a child. But for one little girl from Lynchburg, what went on behind closed doors may never be fully known. Her name was Amarah Lane, born October 22, 2016. Not even 2 years later, she would be dead. This is where Amarah Lane is at rest now, Potter's Field at the Old City Cemetery. They call this the Kids' Corner. Family members say it is a tragic end to what can only be described as a complicated life.
Just thinking that child was in that house with this monster and she just hitting her and probably yelling at her, and the baby had no escape.
The monster, according to family members, Amarah's own mother, Fantasia Lane. She's charged with killing her. ABC 13 obtained this paperwork from the state dated last September. It details how, shortly after Amarah was born, Child Protective Services got involved with her family and requested an emergency removal from her home due to abuse and neglect. Amarah had been with her mother. The girl wound up at Lynchburg General with burns on her face and swollen hands. A family friend wonders if the Department of Social Services did enough to keep Amarah safe.
Somebody just didn't do their job. Somebody wasn't on top of this. I feel as though this baby had been just like thrown away. They just failed this baby.
Social Services worked extensively with the Lane family, but they're not legally able to talk about a client. What we did learn is there is a statewide shortage of social workers, and those who loved Amarah can't stop thinking the agency missed something.
Does it meet the definitions of abuse and neglect?
Tamara Rosser, the director of Lynchburg Human Services, agreed to speak with me following a recent board meeting. Do you have enough people to adequately investigate these calls?
We're always in a situation where we could use more people to investigate these calls. I don't think that the agency can be responsible for the actions of individuals.
In Lynchburg, there are 5 investigators working an average of 40 cases. Over the last 5 years in Virginia, the agency has documented 219 children that have died as the result of abuse or neglect. I traveled to Richmond and met with the director of Virginia's Division of Family Services about staffing issues and the impact on care.
No, we are never fully staffed.
You are never fully staffed. Carl Ayers says a department workload study done a decade ago shows the agency was short several hundred workers. He says a shortage continues. If you're understaffed, one would say that that is putting potentially children at risk because someone can't get to them maybe fast enough or can't assess a family quickly enough.
The more manageable caseloads that we have and the more well-trained and well-qualified staff, well-tenured staff that we have better outcomes.
We will likely never know if a staffing shortage contributed to Amarah's death, but what we do know is she died at UVA Medical Center in Charlottesville 3 months ago. Amarah was only 22 months old, and the answers those who loved her are still searching for are hard to find. Amarah's mother, Fantasia Lane, is charged with child abuse and neglect, child endangerment, and murder. She's scheduled to stand trial in March. A family friend tells me that Amarah's family in Roanoke plans to sue social services for what happened to that little girl. Now, if you suspect a child is being abused or neglected, call the state hotline number at 800-552-7096. 2 sets of parents at one school in our area recently buried their children. They lost them to suicide. Few of us can imagine that kind of grief, anger, and guilt. Tonight, in a story you will only see here, how a new law that went into effect right before school started last year may help to save other kids before it's too late. Hannah Cousins had her whole life in front of her. She'd be graduating from Tunstall High School in a few months, head off to college, and eventually a career in criminal justice. The world and everything it had to offer was in her hands, or so everyone thought.
It's a constant battle every day. Knowing that she's not here, there's nothing nobody can do to bring her back.
One night last November, Hannah got out of bed, grabbed a gun her father keeps in the house, went outside, and pulled the trigger. Dead at 17.
It's like somebody had ripped my heart out that morning because it is not something I would expect it at all.
They want to know why.
I'm to the point now that I think that there was more going on that nobody knew about, that she just held it all inside.
If there was more, like bullying, schools are now required to let parents know. House Bill 1709 became law last July. It says schools must notify parents within 5 days if their child is involved in an alleged bullying incident.
She had told us one time, she said, I've had some issues. I went to the school, talked to the principal, and all she told me was let it roll off my back.
The cousins say their other children told them Hannah was exposed to hateful messages on social media.
One girl went on a rant about how she wanted to drag Hannah by the hair of her head down the steps.
Brian Bowles is the principal at Tunstall. He says he's not able to talk about whether Hannah's parents were notified of any potential bullying at school.
Whether it be in school or outside of school, it has to be handled with very strict confidence.
The Virginia Department of Education sent this memo to superintendents across the state to make sure everyone was aware of all the legislative changes for the upcoming school year, including HB 1709. The state tracks instances of bullying which school districts self-report. In the previous school year in Pittsylvania County, where Tunstall High School is located, administrators logged 22 instances of bullying. That's one less when compared to the year before. After Hannah's death, Bowles decided his school needed to do more.
We began to reach out for resources and education that might help us to learn how we can implement preventive measures so that these things would not happen in the future.
Depression. It doesn't always look like you think it's going to look.
Tunstall is training teachers and others how to spot troubled students and get them help. Local agencies are meeting with parents to show them how they can get involved. Plus, this high school had been shaken by another student suicide the previous school year. In Virginia, suicide is the second leading cause of death among 15 to 34-year-olds and third leading cause of death for those 10 to 14. Bevan Lovelace has a unique perspective on all this. She attempted suicide.
I was in high school. I was about 15.
Today, she's on the front lines trying to save young lives as a licensed professional counselor.
For teenagers and for children, everything is in that moment. It's that moment. They're unable to see the future. They're unable to know and understand that 30 years from now it's going to be okay.
If only Hannah Cousins' parents or someone could have helped her understand that maybe, just maybe, her tomorrows would get better.
Every parent wants to have the mindset that this could never happen to them. Your child would never make that decision until you get faced with reality.
As far as suicides in Virginia, using the most recent data available since 2010, the numbers have been growing, with the most recorded in 2014, as you can see here. There was a slight drop in 2015. Mental health experts will tell you most children who are bullied don't contemplate suicide, but it's good to know the warning signs. You can find that information on our ABC 13 News app. You can also search the database to see what schools are reporting where you live. Plus, join us for a Facebook Live at 6:30. Mental health professionals will be here to answer all your questions.